Hello and welcome to our workshop called Move Well, Be Strong. My name's Professor Mark De Ste Croix. I'm a professor at the University of Gloucestershire and I'm really delighted to be hosting this workshop for you this afternoon. What I'm going to do is run through a relatively short presentation that's going to highlight why moving well is really important for young children. So just to give you a bit of context about what the project's about, we were delighted to receive some funding from the Prince Faisal bin Fahad Sport Research Award to undertake this project, which has been to devise and develop a movement competency workshop for grassroots coaches and physical education teachers. It's been supported by the Ministry for Sport in Saudi Arabia. And what we have produced so far is a dedicated website with supporting materials that you'll be able to access after you've attended this workshop. We've already run a very similar and very successful delivery program across Europe to around 700 sports coaches who have increased both their knowledge and, importantly, their confidence to deliver movement competency training in youth sport and physical education settings. So the main purpose of the workshop really is to try and help increase your knowledge and your understanding about why movement competency is really important for children, and in particular how they might gain success and fun through moving better, but also for those children who are on maybe in a more elite pathway, so looking at joining competitive professional sports, that they're in a really good place to get to their endpoint, e.g. becoming professional. Importantly, we hope we might change your attitude towards the importance that movement competency training has in terms of your PE lessons and your coaching environments, but also, and probably most importantly, give you the confidence to be able to deliver these sessions so that the children can move better. So I'm going to talk for hopefully only about 20 minutes around why this is really important, why we think it's important based on the research that we've already done. And then I'll be handing over to Dr. Jonathan Hughes, who will be able to provide you with lots of example movements that the children could and should be doing both in your PE lessons and your coaching sessions. That list of practicals won't be exhaustive, so what we have on the website is a whole range of additional movements and resources that you can look at in your own time. So we're trying to provide you with the tools so that you start using this movement competency program, that you use it correctly, and most importantly, that you stick with it, that you adhere to what we've done and you maintain it over a period of time. Okay, so why is this important? You might think that children are sort of relatively robust and, for example, they're not at risk of getting injured. Well, here I've just got some data from Norwegian knee ligament registry that shows by age and sex the risk that's associated with potential injury. And hopefully you can clearly see we get this rapid increase in injury incidents based on knee ligament reconstructions in children between the ages here of about 12 and 17 years of age. So what we've found with all of our research on injury and injury risk in children is that they tend to be a very high risk group. So if you're working with them in both a PE and coaching setting, what you actually have in front of you is what we might classify as a high-risk athlete. There are many things that are probably happening during this period of time that are unique to children. So in particular, their growth and maturation and the development and their progress through their sport. So it's important that we identify that, and also we understand that boys and girls may be slightly different in terms of their potential risk. So why do we really want to get the kids moving well? We want it to start at a really young age, and children start moving from birth onwards. But we're wanting to do it so that not only we can hopefully reduce the risk of injury, but also enhance performance. Because what we know from the research is that children who are successful in sport, and I don't necessarily mean very successful, but just enjoy it, they tend to have more fun. Those that can move well, that can perform the skills that we're asking them to do, will probably stay more likely engaged in sport and physical activity through their lifetime. We know that it provides some transferable skills to other things, whether they're working within a single sport or across multiple sports, and we'd always encourage some form of multi-sport participation. There's also some really good evidence around enhancing mental well-being, including the sort of psychological well-being and really good habits that are established through developing habits at a young age rather than changing habits when they get into adult life. So what we're trying to do through good movement is promote lifelong habits that we know are essential for fun and engagement, but are also really important for the development of talent. So if we sort of break this down, what we're trying to do generally through the program, but the program is designed, and hopefully you'll see this as a very simple movement competency program. But what we're trying to do as an end goal is to build what we refer to as a healthy, strong, resilient young athlete. And what you may or may not be able to quite see on this slide is something that's called the Coach's Dozen, which was designed by an American called Avery Feigenbaum. And it clearly lays out the type of things that we should be doing as coaches if we're coaching or teaching young children in terms of building this healthy, strong, resilient athlete. Okay, some of this is around producing physical literacy. Some is around making sure that we foster creativity through the different types of games and movements that we're getting the children to do. Okay, it's important really that they enjoy the game that they're playing, because these will link to lifelong and long-term improvements and adherence. So really the whole program is about making sure that you're a really good role model, either as a coach or a PE teacher, and that you help to develop the good habits early on in childhood. So no matter what age group of children you're working with, it's important that you establish these habits, establish these good movements, and make sure that they track through childhood all the way through into adulthood. Because as I've already said, we know that if we have good habits and they move well, they're more likely to have more fun and stay engaged, not disengaged with the physical activity and sporting movements that we want them to do. So sort of underpinning our program itself, whenever you devise a sort of movement training program, you need to understand the key movements that children do when they're participating in PE and sport. And it's probably not surprising what most of the key movements are that are on this slide. So we expect children to be able to jump. Obviously, if they jump, they also need to be able to land. We often see them running in straight lines, but not always in straight lines. So running in a straight line, we think about accelerating. We sometimes don't think enough about slowing down, so decelerating. Can they do that safely and properly? When they slow down, often it's because something's about to happen. That might be invariably a change in the direction that they're moving in. So being able to turn, cut and sidestep is also really important. And just being able to take load through the body in terms of any squatting or those very static movements as well as the dynamic ones. We know that children generally do lots of dynamic movements. They like to run around, they like to jump, but it's also important that we often get them doing things slowly. So in terms of that balance, that type of movement that they need to do when they're not moving quickly. So our program is underpinned by making sure that we're designing a movement program that encompasses all of these key movements in PE and sport. So what are we trying to do today? Well, we're not trying to make you movement experts. We wouldn't expect that in a single workshop. But what we'd like you to do is to use sort of your critical PE teacher stroke coach's eye to be able to sort of understand what some of the key movement patterns should look like. And if you see poor movement patterns, going in and be able to correct those with some really simple coaching cues. So it's really looking at how children move, especially when they're changing direction and landing, because we know that they're quite high risk activities for children. They're likely to get injured when they're doing those type of movements. And what we tend to see, especially maybe more so in girls, is often a very poor landing technique. And you might be able to see in this image here the sort of knees coming together. We might call it knee knocking. That's not a really good position for those knees to be in terms of the amount of load, and the risk of injuring those knees is higher if they're in those positions. So we're wanting to try and develop that really good coordination, that ability of the child to be able to also decelerate, to be able to stop quickly, but stopping whilst being in control of their body, so that the movements are good, to be able to then maybe potentially do the next movement. Lots of these movements that we're going to do are around making sure that what we've got is the adequate strength in the right muscles to keep the joint stable, but also to do the tasks that we're wanting the children to be able to do. So the question is there really good evidence to show that if we have a program like the one that we set up for you today, that we can help the children to move better? And here's a really good quote that suggests that actually over half of overuse injuries in youth sport are easily preventable with good coaching. So that's hopefully what we're doing today. Part of that process is making sure you've got the right skills and the confidence to deliver the movement competency coaching. Probably that we delay specialization, so we try and do multi-sports, and if you're in a PE environment, you probably already are exposing the children to very various types of sports and movements, and also this type of preparatory conditioning that needs to be done. And obviously this type of movement training is probably additional conditioning work than the children would get through just participating in PE and sport itself. What we need to think about is what this looks like, and it isn't the picture on the left. We don't need to necessarily at a young age be thinking that children need to be lifting large weights. It's going to be very much around using their own body weight to get into the good positions. So in both pictures, they're in quite good positions, quite good squatting positions, but we're not expecting to lift very heavy loads. The body weight is often enough. So this movement competency program is around getting the body into the right position, not necessarily about lifting large weights. We have our own body mass that we can use in children as the load that will also help to strengthen and develop the muscles around particular joints. So does it work, you might ask? Well, there is really good evidence out there showing that movement training can both enhance performance and reduce injury. There are a number of really good academic studies that have looked at intervening in the large scale, what we call randomized controlled trials, where they've gone in, put an intervention in place and clearly shown improvements in performance parameters, but also in injury reduction rates. Some of the studies in the States have shown up to nearly a 90% reduction in injuries if you include some form of specific movement competency training. So we know this training works, and this is data with children. So it definitely works to enhance performance. It can enhance performance in many different ways. Here's just a few studies that I've chosen that talks about improving balance, reducing injury risk, improving jumping, which is not just jumping height, so that's a performance parameter, but also the ability to land really well, so also reducing injury risk. And it links both to that injury and also that performance. Not everybody we want to need or have to be performing to a high level, but when we talk about performance, remember we're talking about kids performing maybe the sports that you're doing in physical education, performing better so that they enjoy it more and they get more fun out of it, and therefore they stay engaged. So we see that on lots of different levels, these type of programs are really effective for children, whether they're on an elite program or whether they're in a PE class having fun. So key things you just need to consider. We're going to make sure that what we do is safe and effective. Okay, so when we go into the practical session, we're going to be talking about some of the technical movements, but keeping those technical movements really simple. So the sort of type of teaching and coaching cues that we use for kids are very simplistic, but they are focused on the technical skills. Okay, we think about how competent the children are in performing a variety of movements, okay, making sure that that's done in a safe, effective and enjoyable way. The other things you may need to consider, more so if you're maybe on an elite pathway or an elite program, is the maturational age of the child. So how are they developing and maturing? Because we know that maturation affects the way children move. In particular, their limbs change at different rates, and their running, jumping, landing style may change simply because they're going through a maturational phase. In particular, a very sharp burst around their maximal growth in their height, where we see children become a little bit awkward in their movements. If you're on, as I say, an elite pathway and you're a coach that trains elite youth athletes, you may also be considering the training age. So how much training have they had previous to when you've been exposed to them as an athlete, and also that quality of that training. And the final point to consider is the psychosocial maturity of these individuals. Okay, as the children go through maturity, there are lots of psychological and social things happening to them in their lives, and we have to consider how we factor that into our general programming. So our program is built a little bit around this athletic motor skill competencies model. That seems a little bit complex and complicated because there are 8 things on there that we would like you to think and focus about. However, what we've tried to do is really simplify this program for you. So we hopefully won't be using most of these terms, but all of the things that you'll be working on with your children, if you use the movements that we teach you, will be taken from and focused on these type of things. So jumping, landing, rebounding mechanics, anti-rotation and core bracing. What we would like you to think about, and what we will refer to it is more, is around enhancing balance and coordination. So really simply, we're going to be getting the kids to move in quite slow ways sometimes, but can they do that in a really coordinated way and in a controlled way? So you'll hear the word control probably quite a lot as we move into the practical element. You might wonder why we're doing this with you. Well, you are critically important to the success of anything that we've developed. So we've developed the program based on our research and the evidence that's in the literature. And we know that we've got a really good program that works because we've already used it in European countries before. However, we can't reach all of the children and those in both P environments and in elite environments. Therefore, we've developed this program because you are critically important in being able to deliver this to the children that you work with. Okay, and buy-in is really important. If you decide obviously not to use this program, then the children won't get any of the benefits that we've already highlighted that we know the children can get if they do use this program. So your buy-in is critically important. We want you to have a very open mind about using the program. Also, though, how you might adapt the program to fulfill your certain needs. But there are a number of studies you can see on this slide that really reinforce the importance of the coach. So you're crucial to the success of this program. We know the program's great. It will only be great if you adopt it, use it, and deliver it. So you'll see the movements are what we might call isolated movements. They're concentrating on different parts of the body, different joints, to try and make sure we've got that good balance and coordination in those joints. But when you think about how you're going to incorporate these things, these movements into your sessions, we're leaving that totally up to you as the coaches and the PE teachers. You've got all the really great ideas of how you might use some of these movements in your lessons or your coaching sessions. Okay, the movements are only really limited by your imagination and your own practice. The key thing that we always would want to reinforce to you is about be creative and keep it fun. Often people get overly confused by training programs, thinking they need to do a certain amount of exercises, sets and reps. What we're saying is, if the children aren't doing anything already, if you can give them something, that's more than they have been getting. Okay, so we're not worried about how many of the exercises you do in a session, how long it lasts for. What we're looking for is for you to say, well, oh, hang on, there's those movements and I can incorporate them into my session, and actually that will be a really fun way to do it. But I'm focusing and remembering that I'm doing those, getting the kids to do that movement in a really controlled manner. So what does our program look like? You'll see on the website there are a whole range of videos that show each of the exercises. They might show some of them from the front and from the side. And here is just an example of one of our really simple coaching cues for the type of movements you must be encouraging the children to do whilst they're doing the exercise. So it's not complicated. For example, the picture on the left says, let's try to make sure the knee doesn't buckle inwards as we're doing the movements. And you can see in the second panel, we have reach the arms so that they're in line with the ears. Keep your foot parallel to the floor. They're very simple coaching cues, but as I say, you've got a whole range of movements here and a great resource that you can access that shows these different movements. And here's an example of a few more of the different movements, again, with those really simple coaching cues. You'll also find on the website a manual that you can access that will also show you these movements in a more digital book form. But the videos are what you can access to actually show the movements in real time. So, final take-home messages. It's really important that you keep it simple because we've tried to keep it simple for you. Okay, the coaching cues are really simple, and don't worry if you can't remember all of the things today. As I said, you've got the access to those resources to be able to go back to. Importantly for us, as always, working with children, it's about making it fun. Really think about how you can integrate these things into your session, where it can be integrated. It doesn't have to always be at the very start or the very end. Put it into the skills or the breakdown of skills that you're doing throughout the sessions. You can integrate it. We don't need to be obsessive about that they have to do 5 or 10 of each movement. Let's just get them moving. It doesn't need to be sort of a set number and a set number of reps. Think about it being child-centered. So if you can get to a point where you're confident that the children can deliver some of these movements to the other kids, or even older groups to younger groups, that's absolutely brilliant. And we need to make sure that we introduce it early. So what we're trying to do is make sure that children as young as possible are getting access to this really good movement competency training. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. If you'd like to go over now to part 2, which is the practical session that is run by Dr. Jonathan Hughes. Thank you and good luck. Hope you take up the Move Well, Be Strong program.